As you can see, these little beauties got cut back. So, yeah, a bit of a shame. We had a really, really stormy night last night. I don't know, it sounded like 150 kilometre-hour winds, wasn't it? So I promised you an update on those yellow flowering later wattles, etc. Because we are the land of the green and gold sort of thing. So, yeah, so I'll go around here. We had one house that was damaged around here. The SES were clearing up early on this afternoon. Well, less than an hour ago they were still there. I don't think they're there now, but anyway, I don't know, something's rattled the White Sox Sour guy's cage recently. They're all doing this palaver about the perlite and, you know, the pH or something. They're using a TDS meter to measure the pH. I said, no, use the standard universal indicator that was developed out of bog research in the Scandinavian countries. So, yeah, see, in the distance there on the left-hand side, you can see one of these, wow, wattles as we call them. It could be a P relation, but we tend to use it like a generic term. Anyway, apparently they had the SES out here only less than an hour ago. They were clearing up. What do you think of these, eh? Go to spot Cullen for you. South African relations or anything. Yeah. Anyway, thought you liked that. And yeah, I was just clearing up some tree or bush that had fallen down. I think it was here. Yeah, it must be here. Because the next road over leads to my place. Yeah, it was here, I think. Something that had fallen down here. You can see where they had their truck. But yeah, anyway, they cleared that up, so that was something. It's quite a big tree, but you wouldn't even know that it had fallen down, would you? Anyway, as I said, so here's one of these later ones in the season as we're heading rapidly into the dry, even though we come off the end of a 22-year El Nino drought sort of thing that went on for an extra 11 years. Normally it's a 10-year period of dry years, and then we have a La Nina. So we have the little boy and the little girl sort of thing. So yeah. And instead of having just a 10-year or drier period with drier years right in the middle of those 10 years, we had extended out from 1999 all the way to last year, basically. Yeah, all the way to last year. And I think it's finally broken now. And I think we're going to have 22 years of La Nina, or the wet, or the little girls or there. And in the middle of that 22 years, we're going to get some really wet years, but we're already having major flooding on the east coast. And the woman announced this morning the soil is totally saturated. This rain we're getting over the next few days, it just cannot be supported by the soil. And yeah, so it's going to fill up. The creeks will be bulged. Everything's going to be flooded. And I'm thinking, is it going to flow down here to the Coorong via the Murray River? I see that's what it was like about 3 or 4 days ago. That sort of bright yellow. And now it's going to a sort of slightly orange, off yellow orange colour. And it's now beyond the John Wayne over there. But you can see the massive amount of blooms in these later ones. Anyway, So will we see that down the Coorong? If we don't see that down the Coorong, then there's something major afoot, I would say. Yeah, something's not quite right. So, yeah. Anyway, something spooked the White Sox Sour guys, I think. Someone's rattled their cage, I think. And made some funny statements like this statement like, we tried 60% perlite, 40% peat. We tried to cut down the weight, and I'm thinking, but perlite absorbs the water. It'll become heavier. You know, it won't stay light. And I'm thinking, nah, that doesn't sound right. So, and then there was things like, you know, with the lower ratios, they were having trouble with the impedance or the infiltration rate. Well, that's because of the reaction that goes on with the perlite, of course. And, well, they weren't saying that, of course, but anyway. So I'm going back to basics. And the only thing that worked for me this past season was the salt that doesn't burn. That was the only step forward, but it didn't seem to do anything. You know, it didn't kill the plants, didn't seem to affect the plants too much. And I thought, oh yes, the one thing we haven't done was we haven't double flushed the salt that doesn't burn. So I'm thinking, yes. So I'm thinking that the salt that doesn't burn is basically the equivalent to the ashen layer that you see in these podzolic coastal forest soils, you know, pine plantations and things like that. And I'm thinking, they always do this palaver about, you know, the Venus flytrap growing around Wilmington, 100 miles around Wilmington. Of course, if you dig into that sort of those statements, it's a ban, a mile ban either side of Wilmington, because you can't really go into the ocean from Wilmington and Fayetteville and things like that, you know. You can't go 100 miles out into the ocean. They did say that they presume that flytraps did actually grow further out in prehistoric times, so yeah. But I've also come across yet another article going back to 1834, where it's stated this person says they're bigger and they grow down in Florida and they're bigger and more colourful than they do around Wilmington. And that's going back, so that's another one. This one actually goes back to the date of 1834, whereas the other quote I got was from the Elisha Mitchell Society meeting in the middle of the 1880s, like 1885, somewhere around there sort of time. And I'm loath or behoved to actually find it again, sort of thing, but yeah. Basically, when people at the meeting sort of confirmed what this bloke was saying, so yeah, so people in the Civil War had seen them down there in Florida. So all this old man Northrop is, I think it's just a ploy so you can dig up plants from the wild halfway across almost halfway across the continent, basically. So you cut your flytrap miles down by half, sort of thing. So instead of digging them in North and South Carolina, you dig them up down in Florida, so you've only got half the transit cost to get them to the West Coast, basically, to sell them, basically. And of course you're digging them up for free, and you're so-called it's not illegal because they're not native, but they are actually, because as Donald Snell showed, they're on the flight path. If you study the works of Darwin, he did research into seeds on birds' feet and things like that. What could you grow from the mud from birds' feet and things like that? So showed that there was a correlation between their flight path, where they actually landed and things like that, and the actual type of plants and the seeds of those plants that would stick to in the mud to their feet, sort of thing. So that was work done by Darwin, and Donald Snell showed there's a sort of correlation between the flight path of certain birds and the flytraps down there. And I found another article by a woman who said that in her younger years, this is an article going from the early, I think it's 1920s or something. She said in her childhood, she found places in Georgia where they had the flytrap. So yeah, that was very interesting. And she said in the actual North and South Carolina, when you dig over the soil, like you totally make it fallow, sort of thing, you rip off the top surface, flytraps would come up from seeds there. So whether they're flytrap, as a flytrap seed bank sitting in there, and she said that the soil remains basically consistently damp, and if you pull back the scrubby vegetation on the surface, you get all these flytraps coming out, presumably from seeds either in the seed bank or seeds that came into that bare patch that you made, sort of thing. So that was very interesting as well. So anyway, so I just hope the White Sox sour guys get to using the universal indicator, which is made with specialist organic acids, which are hard to make, but they're very stable and they don't deteriorate much, so that, and they work at all sorts of temperature ranges. And yeah, so I'm going back to basics, taking a bucket of sand. Hopefully the sand's come back to what it used to be, I don't know, after 3 years of madness or something, I don't know. I'm just going to put the camera down here, and yeah, we're going to stop all these fun and games now. We're going to get serious now, and I'll just get my... gas bag and too much. I need a drink. It's still in. So I'm just going to open this bag up and see what we got. It's as you can see, play pit sand. It feels good, but I don't know. It might not be what we want. I don't know. But can our sort of made up ashen layer basically do the business? Can it do all the work for us? So to take this idea that the ashen layer is made by the brown woods, the highly lignified woods of the, well, I suppose you call it the North Horizon, the organic layer, that's why it's called. It's not really the North layer, it's the O Horizon, but you know, we call it, nah, it's not as white as it used to be. I don't know, it's not quite as fine as I would like it to be. But yeah, now we need so we got a 6mm wide by just under an inch sort of slot. We find that's the good. We want something that gives you a drip rate of 1 drip per second, or in other words, every 2 counts. So you go 1, 2 drip, 3, 4 drip, 5, 6 drip when you do the count. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the normal counting rate basically. Now if I can find, yeah, here we go. I'll put this on spot culling. We should be able to find something like this. So we'll give you a close-up on the sand. I don't know. We've got enough light now. So we got something like this, a bit of fly wire. You put it in here, in your tub down the bottom. Yeah, and like that. And then we just sort of basically, I'll keep bending down, and we fill it up to the top with it. Make sure there's no stones or anything. See, it's got little bits of iron in there every now and again, so little patches of iron and the occasional bit of dolomite limestone which you want to pull out, or calcium magnesium carbonate. It never used to be like that, but you know, as I said, we're coming out the other end of 3 years of madness, so you've got to basically bear with me. So yeah, as I said, you don't want to be like, we had somebody in Victoria, in Melbourne, Victoria, back in the 80s, so this is like nearly 40 years ago now, and he had like a big hobby business or thing, and he started selling individual Sarracenia leaves in a big ball of sphagnum, until eventually someone said to someone, that's never going to grow, there's just individual leaves. And so this was back in the 80s when you had the glyphosate had just sort of come on the market, and you basically had zero weeding wands. That's all you really could get. It was hard to get the actual chemical in a bottle sort of thing. But somehow this bloke, or he got a friend to do it, I don't know, got a big canister of this stuff, so he must have gone commercial or something. And he lobbed this big canister over this bloke's fence into his reservoir. And of course he didn't find this canister for a whole week, and he'd already watered his plants, so he found it after a week, and over the next 3 weeks after that, week, he watched all his plants, like thousands, like I think he had like 3,000 Sarracenia or something like that. He watched all these plants and sundews and nepenthes and everything else slowly die over the next week. So by the end of a month, after lobbing this canister, all his plants were dead. And well, justice was done. Justice was served, I suppose, in a way. But it's just a warning to wantons and these the white sock sour guys. You know, don't bullshit people, and you better measure the pH of your perlite using the universal indicator, which was designed and manufactured with information coming out of bog research in Scandinavian countries, and it's highly reliable. It's only good for half a pH unit, so, but it is accurate for that sort of thing. If you do that, I think you're going to get a shock, and I think the white sock sour guys are going to have to do a bit of backpedaling. As I said, I think their cage has been rattled. And yeah, that statement about 60% doesn't make sense either, because surely they know that perlite gets heavier when you wet it. What you wetting it up is one thing. It does absorb water, and if you put it in a complete container with me, in a bottle or something, over about a week, you'll see the whole of the perlite fills up with water completely. You know, it goes right into the perlite, and yeah. So all this idea about aeration. I think I put too much, I don't know. I have to keep a layer here because I'm going to pour on some of our ashen layer stuff here, so I've got to shake it up sort of thing. I'm just going to put a layer, and we're going to find out how much we want to put on. We want to put on 1 bottle or 2 bottles worth, and then we'll start double flushing it, and then after a few double flushes we'll plant some plants in it, and hopefully, if the science works its 50-year magic, we should find out this ashen layer that we put on the surface will actually start to change, and the whole thing will become fertile and productive, and we'll get our common CP related weeds starting to grow, so on and so forth. So I think that might be enough, because when we put wet material into a bucket like this, it's going to sink down anyway, but we're going to add some to the surface. So we take this, we'll give it a go, see what happens. It may sink down too much, I don't know. We'll give it a go. We have to put 2 bottles worth of this so-called ashen layer sort of thing. So we put this in and put it in. Hopefully it's level, but you can level the pot up using either something like that or something like that, and by shifting it around you always find your level. It's a very simple, very cheap and effective way. Now I'm just going to shake this up again, make sure we get our ashen layer compound, or equivalent to okay, get it there, and that should go through the bucket and eventually start dripping out the bottom, and then you can start flushing. I think that's a bit too not level enough, so I'm going to take maybe this one. See, is that the one we want? It's too much, so it's going to be this one. So we put that one in there, or we can get something slightly in between, and but by putting it in how far you want to put it over, you can basically do something like this and get it pretty much level. It's not quite level on this side to that one, so basically what that means is I need to bring this round a bit more on the other side. So if I do it around here, I can then level off on two sides basically, and yeah, sort of. And you can play around with it until you get it just right. So a bit like that. So now we've basically leveled it off, and it's good to go. We just want to keep filling, make sure the plastic thing's still in there so we don't drill a hole into our sand. Yeah, I've done this many times before, fellas. I know all the bells and whistles. Come on, after 50 years of this stuff, I think you're going to get a surprise out of this one, because this is the only thing we didn't do. As I said, we seem to make a step forward, and it didn't kill the plants. They sort of, it was a sort that didn't burn, but it didn't seem to do much. And I'm thinking, we haven't double flushed it. That's the trick, of course. Because, okay, let's go back a few steps. discovered the double flush around about 2011. So it's been a decade or so of basic research on the double flush. And basically what we found, that if you put a thin layer of organic material, coir, peat, newspaper cellulose, even charcoal, but charcoal takes a long time to get going, 4 to 6 months to start. But then we found that charcoal was a bit better than peat, slightly better. But don't put the charcoal in the bottom of the pot.